I like Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. It's my Yu-Gi-Oh! Era of choice, and it's the era I'm the most familiar with and fond of. Nostalgia definitely plays a factor, I can't deny that. But GX has a charm all its own that sets it apart from other Yu-Gi-Oh! Eras. Now, if you ask a GX fan what their favorite season is, a lot of them will probably tell you it's Season 3. Season 3 was notably different from the previous two seasons in terms of tone, having a darker and more dramatic story, which many fans loved. They liked the new directions that Season 3 went, and some even felt that the first two seasons should have been more like Season 3. And not to be the king of contradiction, but I have to politely disagree. That is to say, I'm not the biggest fan of Season 3. I definitely get why a lot of fans like it, and there's quite a few things about Season 3 I like as well. But it also has some major glaring problems that really bring it down and keep it far away from being the best of GX. At least in my view. So with this video, and hopefully a couple future videos, I'm gonna try to explain and justify why Season 3 leaves me so sour. I'm going to be judging GX based on the original Japanese version, with a reliable English fansub courtesy of one GLL99. So with that all being said, I'm Andyb, and let's get started. Now before we dive into Season 3, I want to briefly, okay maybe not briefly, go over the first two seasons. Yu-Gi-Oh! GX stars Jaden Yuki, a carefree go-getter who's passionate about dueling. After defeating Mr. Dr. Professor Crowler, a leading Italian gear enthusiast, Jaden gets accepted into the prestigious Duel Academy, where card games become careers. We follow Jaden and his friends as they navigate adolescent school life, card games, and supernatural happenings. Right from its premise, GX introduces itself as a more lighthearted show compared to the previous series. I imagine for some people this was kind of a turnoff, but it helps establish GX as its own distinct series. While it's certainly informed and building off the original, GX wasn't beholding itself to simply repeat the past. Season 1 can be broken into two halves, with the first half containing the aforementioned school life misadventures. Even if the stakes aren't world-ending, the first half introduces some memorable characters, features a ton of great duels, and generally has a lot of fun moments. The second half is the more serious of the two, with a story more in line with the original series. It deals with Jaden and his friends fighting against the Shadow Riders, a group of elite duelists led by Kagemaru, a man who wants to revive the 3 Sacred Beast cards to restore his youth and obtain ultimate power. However, just because it has a darker story with higher stakes doesn't necessarily make it the better half. At the very least, it's not a clear victory. It has some strong duels and moments, but there's a few underlying issues that I think bring it down. For example, the Shadow Riders are a pretty disjointed and incohesive team who don't even interact with each other. They're effectively 7 separate mercenaries working for the same guy. I find Kagemaru's plan to be pretty ridiculous and convoluted. The Sacred Beasts are pretty much a rehash of the God cards. I didn't like how Jaden was the one to defeat nearly every Shadow Rider. Episode 47 is one of the worst episodes of GX, and the fact it leads right into the final battle is just painful. And some supporting characters who showed potential for growth in the first half get totally sidelined in the second half. Cyrus and Chumley in particular being the main victims of the sidelining. Personally, I would have preferred if Cyrus would have been the one to defeat Camula. It could have been a great moment for him to avenge his brother, show off some new Viacroids, and really come into his own. But nope, he spends the second half barely doing anything of importance. So it's not without its problems, and honestly it does pale in comparison to Duelist Kingdom. But I still think GX Season 1 is fairly good, and it does manage to end on a strong note. Episode 50 is a great Chumley-focused episode, though it would have been more impactful had there been more episodes like it beforehand, but I digress. And the graduation match between Jaden and Zane in episodes 51 and 52 is fantastic, and one of the best duels in GX. Ultimately, Season 1 lays a good foundation for a following Season to improve upon. And oh, improvements were made! Season 2 is a notable step up from Season 1. The plot involves a powerful fortune teller named Sartorius, a man who's possessed by an evil celestial spirit known as the Light of Destruction. Under its influence, Sartorius corrupts students of Duel Academy, turning them into his Society of Light, and plans to bring about the demise of the universe. So why do I think Season 2 is a better season? Well, it set up a stronger overarching narrative right from the start, which also meant it had more time to flesh it out. And even as the story introduces new twists and turns, the thematic motif of destiny is kept intact. Generally speaking, the plot feels like a more thought-out and full package. Compared to Kagemaru, I find Sartorius to be a much better main villain. With a wicked design, an interesting set of cards, a sinister ability to prey upon and manipulate people's emotions, and a stellar voice performance courtesy of
Arcana Force 21, the worldを召喚.
What did you say?
Arcana Force 21.
It introduces some great new characters while also giving some nice developments and arcs to previous ones, with a couple exceptions. And of course, there were a ton of great duels, like Zane vs. Mad Dog, Aster vs. Jaden, Match 1 and 2, Jaden vs. White Dorm Alexis, Cyrus vs. Zane, Aster vs. the D, Crowler vs. Bonaparte. Mamma mia! Okay, it's mostly for that scene. This is my favorite season of GX, and when I think back to what I love about this particular Yu-Gi-Oh era, a good chunk of it lies in Season 2. Granted, it does have its own share of problems and ridiculous moments. For example, the Arcana Force monster effects. In the real-life game, their effects were determined by a coin flip. But in the show, they're determined by calling the stop of a spinning card, and whether or not it's upright. The cards spin at a fairly slow speed, but nobody seems able to time their stops correctly. I know Sartorius, and more importantly the plot, are pretty much in control of the outcome, but they still could have made it look like more of a challenge. Or what about the plot point involving the soulless space laser? We already had the Light of Destruction as a means of ending the world, so the introduction of the earth-shattering laser was kind of unnecessary. You got a magical mist ghost with glowy red eyes. I mean, what more do you need? But shortcomings aside, Season 2 is where I felt GX really hit its stride. So how does Season 3 take the baton from Season 2?
Tell me!
It's a new year at Duel Academy, and with it brings new students from various Duel Academy branches. East Campus's Adrian Gecko. I think he might be hiding something. West Academy's Axel Brody. He has a gun for a dual disc. South Academy's Jim Crocodile Cook. He has a crocodile. Yay! And making a late appearance, North Academy's Jesse Anderson. The Magic Man, who gets very close to Jaden.
You're my best friend.
And finally, there's Professor Viper. He's big. Viper gives every student a bioband, a wristwatch that supposedly measures a student's abilities. But in reality, it actually drains a person's energy after they duel. Viper sets up some kind of energy absorption station in this abandoned research facility on the island, which was introduced in Season 1. It was the episode with the monkey. We eventually learn that Viper is collecting energy at the request of a mysterious spirit who promises to bring back his dead son. So numerous duels are had, and numerous students pass out. The number of energy-drained students continues to rise, and Jaden and company demand to know what's going on. But, in a case of terrible timing, Shepard is away on business, and Professor Viper is suspiciously nowhere to be found. Jaden and his friends learn of Viper's whereabouts and head to the facility to confront him. After finding nothing on the main floor, Jaden and company soon discover the lab's underground, which happens to be a giant jungle-like area. The 6 protagonists make their way through the lab's underground jungle, dealing with the wildlife, various traps, and Viper's hired guns. The hired guns in particular being Mr. Stein, a professor who doesn't like Jaden, and Trapper, a man who hunts and collects dual spirits. After Jaden defeats Mr. Stein and Jesse defeats Trapper, the gang regroups and starts to close in on Viper. But as the plot would have it, Adrian gets to Viper first. But instead of dueling him, believing he will cheat using the bio bands, Adrian proposes a different idea. That's right, no card games, no holograms, it's just two buff dudes going fist to fist, and it's awesome.
Round 1, fight! Sonic Boom!
Adrian seems to have the advantage in speed, but Viper gets a power boost from the Evil Eye Spirit and immobilizes Adrian against a wall. At last, Jaden and company come face to face with Viper. He sets the stage by raising the platform they're standing on through the roof. I don't see why the Monkey Lab has this, but it does. And so, Jaden and Viper can finally get their game on. Viper plays Big Snakes, Jaden is losing, Jesse gives him a pep talk, Cyrus is there, Jaden summons Magma Neos, and Jaden wins. The mysterious spirit finally has enough energy to manifest a new form. It teleports to where Jaden and company are and decides to fulfill Viper's wish. The spirit alters Viper's memories so that he believes Pierce never died. He then proceeds to aimlessly walk forward, I guess towards his son? But he's unaware of his surroundings and falls off the edge of the platform. The unknown spirit wants to bring Jaden to a new world, and soon the academy is cloaked in a bright light. Following the light show, Jaden and company soon find themselves in a strange desert. And to the sight of sandy plains as far as the animators would draw, Season 3, Part 1, The Viper Arc, comes to a close. For all intents and purposes, you could consider Jesse a second version of Jaden. They share a lot of core qualities, from their ability to see duel spirits, to their positive go-getter attitudes, and their burning passion for dueling. However, while these qualities make Jesse a fun and generally likable character, they also make him feel kind of redundant. Though to be fair, he's not a total clone. One of his more distinguishing factors are his Crystal Beast monsters. Compared to Chaz and Jaden, where only select monsters are represented as cognitive spirits, all of Jesse's Crystal Beasts are their own characters with distinctive personalities. Him having an undiscovered ace monster is also something unique to his character. And credit where it's due, his similarities to Jaden do have some benefits. Especially towards the end of Part 1, Jesse is able to talk with and understand Jaden in a way that his previous friends haven't, and they have a good chemistry together. I still think they could have done a better job differentiating him from Jaden, but overall, I'd say Jesse is a fine addition to the main cast. Next up, Axel Brody, a tough, no-nonsense son of a mercenary. Along with being a strong silent type, Axel also shows himself to be a pretty tactical duelist, and had Viper not instructed him otherwise, he would have been able to defeat Jaden, which not many characters get to do. I see his personality as a sort of mix between Hasselberry's tenacity and the calm, calculating nature of Season 1 Zane. While there's elements about him that are reminiscent of previous characters, Axel still manages to be his own. Though it's kind of ridiculous when I say it out loud, his gun-shaped dual disc is a good fit for him. That also goes for his volcanic cards too. In the warfare of duel monsters, Volcanic Shell and Blaze Accelerator are his bullets and rifle. Though he's introduced as Viper's right-hand man and a supporting antagonist of sorts, his villain status quickly changes after his duel with Jaden. And with Viper trapping him in episode 112, he's kinda pushed out the way for the second half of Part 1. Personally, I think it would have been kind of interesting if Axel remained an enemy for a bit longer. Having him antagonize the heroes in the jungle, or dueling against one of the other new students, could have made for some cool moments. Axel is a fairly solid character, though I wish they could have done more with him in Part 1. A sentiment I feel even more with the following character. Jim Crocodile Cook. I think Jim is one of the most underbaked new characters from Season 3. I like his general Aussie design. And yeah, I dig his fossil cards.
Oh, bro.
But there's really not a lot to him. The only thing we really get to know about him, at least at this point in the season, is that he has a crocodile companion named Shirley. And in the grand scheme of things, it's more of an amusing gimmick rather than a strong, definable character trait. Granted, he's still an active participant in the story, and is useful in a number of situations. So despite him being fairly shallow, they at least make good use of him. To be fair, they do end up doing some stuff with Jim later on, and trust me, we'll get to that. But at least in Part 1, his lack of depth makes Jim the weakest of Season 3's newcomers.
What?
Adrian Gecko, my personal favorite of Season 3 Part 1's new characters. Adrian is a guy shrouded in mystery. He's got questionable loyalties and motivations, and clearly knows more than he's letting on. And every passing episode keeps the curiosity growing. I think the show does a pretty good job slowly but surely unraveling his character. And by the end of Part 1, Adrian's character arc is left in a good place. After Viper sticks him to the wall, the mysterious evil spirit starts talking to Adrian, looking deep into his heart. A millionaire's adopted son, who wants to prove his worth and make his new parents proud, eventually finds himself in second place, thanks to his new kid brother. Although he's sworn to serve the Gecko family, unsatisfied feelings seem to be buried within. It's our first glimpse into Adrian's inner darkness, and it offers a new side of him for the writers to explore in following arcs. And he was the character I was most intrigued by in this first part of Season 3. Finally, there's Professor Viper, military muscle man extraordinaire. Conceptually, I like the idea of having a sinister, evil teacher as the season's main villain. Given the school setting of the show, it seems pretty fitting. Sadly, the execution of said concept leaves a lot to be desired. My biggest gripe with Viper is that for most of Part 1, we don't know much about his character. We really only dive into his backstory and motivations during his duel with Jaden, and by that point, it's kind of late. I understand the idea of not wanting to reveal everything about your major villain too early, but it's also a problem if you wait too late. Sure, his actions are clearly sinister, but without some understanding of his character and motivations, it's just surface-level, shallow villainy. It's hard to get truly invested or worked up about a character I barely know about. Now, in comparison, Adrian also gets a major backstory dive during Viper's duel with Jaden. But by that point, even with his shroud of mystery, we have some understanding of what he's like as a character. So this backstory dive serves to add a few more pieces to the puzzle. Whereas with Viper, it's like getting to see the completed puzzle for like 10 seconds before it gets thrown in the trash. We're getting introduced just before we have to say goodbye. The only character insight that we get prior to his duel with Jaden is a brief moment in episode 108. Viper gets woken up from what's presumably a nightmare, where a kid is calling out for his dad. Combine that with the fact that Viper continually mentions reviving somebody, and you can piece together the assumption that he's trying to bring back his dead son, or somebody's dead kid. And lo and behold, that's pretty much what his motivation is. Since it is technically foreshadowed, albeit barely, it doesn't really count as an ass pull, but man, it's pretty damn close. Now, by the end of the season, it becomes apparent that Viper isn't the ultimate evil in the room. And in the grand scheme of Season 3, Viper is really just a small part of the whole story. In a way, maybe he's not much of a fleshed out character, because he was never really meant to be. But if we were to go off that basis, making Viper a more simplistic villain actually kind of cheapens the twist and misdirection. If we were shown there was more to this guy, then realizing that he's insignificant would be more impactful and surprising. Telling us that random muscle guy number 3 isn't actually the head honcho isn't that great of a twist.
余計な真似を
Season 3 Part 1 has good tonal consistency. That may not sound like much, but I think it's a noteworthy positive. I've heard some people say that the first 2 seasons of GX are tonally inconsistent. One minute it's lighthearted school life, the other it's a high-stakes fight against a dark evil. It gives the viewer emotional whiplash and makes the narrative feel lopsided. And honestly, that's a fair complaint. I was never really bothered by it myself, but I can totally sympathize with people who were. Season 3 Part 1 eliminates this tonal problem. Right from the get-go, you can tell a sinister plot is bubbling below the surface. And as the story progresses, it continues to grow darker and more tense at a gradual pace, without being interrupted by filler levity. The ramp-up of Season 3 is pretty smooth. I also like a lot of the new card archetypes introduced in Part 1. Crystal Beasts, Volcanics, Fossils, Cloudians. I think they all have cool designs or gimmicks that stand out from previous ones and are interesting to see in action. But now, let's switch it up with a con. Season 3 introduces 5 new major characters pretty much right away. And as a result of so many new characters being introduced all at once, Season 3's main cast feels a bit overcrowded. Now, wanting to focus on your new major characters is perfectly understandable. However, this comes at the cost of previous major characters being shoved to the sidelines or basically ignored. Chaz gets a major duel with Adrian, but afterwards is out of commission for the rest of Part 1. Alexis doesn't have a duel, but she is present for the action. But she doesn't really do much of significance, aside from being held hostage during Jaden's duel with Mr. Stein. And Cyrus! Oh, poor Cyrus. He starts off the season as a new Obelisk Blue, which I actually liked. It made Cyrus the only character that we see rise through the ranks of Duel Academy with every season. But his rank up doesn't really amount to anything. We don't see him in the Blue Dorm, we don't see him interact with any other Obelisk Blues, and of course, he doesn't have a single duel in Part 1. And after Jaden's duel with Axel, where Cyrus is being held hostage, he decides he's not fit to be an Obelisk Blue and goes back to Raw Yellow. Like I said, Cyrus being an Obelisk Blue amounts to nothing, and it's a pointless plot point. And what's worse is that his best friend has a new best friend who's taller, has cooler green hair, and is way better at card games.
I'm losing my best friend.
Out of everyone, Hasselberry gets the best deal, having a major duel and getting to be a part of the action. Congratulations, Dino Dude. Now in comparison, Season 2 did a better job of balancing its new and old characters. And this is partially because they left character space to fill. Chumley left Duel Academy in episode 50, and Hasselberry stepped in to replace him as part of Jaden's main trio. Aster Phoenix served as a new upperclassman and rival for Jaden after Zane graduated from Duel Academy. And even though Bonaparte didn't replace anybody, and to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of him, he paired nicely with Crowler and helped show off new sides of that character. Season 3 just doesn't strike that same balance for me, and I think its lack of balance creates a domino effect that contributes to a lot of the problems I've mentioned. At the core of any Yu-Gi-Oh series is of course the card game itself. And overall, Season 3 Part 1 is fairly good when it comes to duels. There aren't any I'd consider exceptionally bad. I'd say the worst it gets is Hasselberry's primal rage during his fight with Jim. And this primal rage only lasts for like one turn. I mean, it's ultimately a good thing. I wouldn't exactly want Hasselberry growling the entire match. But its short length only helps to emphasize how much of a pointless idea it really was.
Shut up!
Instead of going over every duel in Part 1, we're going to look at a few choice duels that I consider my favorite. There's 3 key categories I'll take into account to judge a duel's quality: story context, character interactions, and of course the duel itself. With that being said, let's take a look at some duels. While Jaden vs. Mr. Stein isn't too spectacular from a dueling perspective, the dialogue that happens during it is what makes it one of my favorites. During the duel, Mr. Stein explains to Jaden why he doesn't like him, and hones in on 2 major characteristics: his nonchalance and his naivety. It's no surprise to hear that Jaden is a bad student, barely attending classes and sleeping through most of the ones he's in. Mr. Stein says if he was a mediocre duelist, this would be fine. But since he's the legendary duelist who defeated the Sacred Beast and the Light of Destruction, people look up to him. As a result, many students adopted his nonchalant attitude towards studying. and Mr. Stein's class numbers dwindled down to nobody. And what's worse is that Jaden is so unaware of his influence. Jaden says he's not a role model and just does what he wants. But Mr. Stein tells him with great power comes great responsibility. Yep, hits him with the old Uncle Ben. It's a great dissection of Jaden's character, and a way of breaking him down so he can be built up. It's also a rare case of Jaden really taking a villain's words to heart. Though he's not always carefree, and shown to be serious and sometimes fearful in bad situations, he more or less comes out of those situations unfazed and unchanged. But here, Jaden is really processing what Mr. Stein is saying about him. Mr. Stein's last words to Jaden are him saying that he will eventually have to question why he duels. And after passing out from the bio-banned energy sap and being woken up by Jesse, Jaden thinks back to these words and asks Jesse the reason why he duels. This is Jaden having a moment of reflection and questioning that he seldom did in previous seasons. Some duels are great because they're exciting spectacles, but some duels are great from a story or character developing standpoint, and Jaden versus Mr. Stein is a prime example of the latter. But this next duel is a prime example of checking both of those boxes. This duel has a lot going for it, both from the game itself and the details surrounding it. It's a fairly even-sided match, and both duelists have some great plays. Chaz makes some grand-scale moves involving his V to Z machines and gains a huge advantage in his first turn. He later shows off a new Ojama Delta combo, which is also fun to see. With Adrian, we get our first look at his Cloudian monsters, which I really like design-wise, and his calculated combos continually wear down Chaz's life points and stronger monsters. The duel does a great job showcasing Adrian's abilities without making Chaz seem like a slouch. Chaz vs. Adrian is also a great matchup from a character dynamic perspective. Despite being Adrian's first duel in the show and more of the focus being on him, it also gives Chaz some nice character moments too. Since they both come from wealthy families, it gives the characters some common ground. In the same way Chaz compares and contrasts himself with Adrian, we as the audience are given a setting to do the same. I mentioned before that Adrian's mysterious character has a well-paced gradual reveal, and this duel is also a good example of that. At first, Chaz is given impressions that he's spoiled and lazy, and he berates him by referencing his own past struggles. But towards the end of the duel, and approaching Adrian's victory, a new truth about his past is revealed, a moment that's accentuated by his ace monster and winning move being revealed as well. We finish the match with new information and impressions of Adrian, but are still left curious and wanting to know more. It's a great spot to leave off. Chaz vs. Adrian is a fantastic duel. It's got a well put together polish that made narrowing down a favorite duel from part 1 an easy choice. Overall, I find Season 3 Part 1 to be a mixed bag, to put it simply. I like a lot of its ideas in concept, but not so much in execution. A sentiment I have throughout a lot of Season 3. I suppose my main problems with the Viper arc can be boiled down to character mishandling. Some have setups that don't go anywhere, some are pushed to the sidelines, some start off in the front and then get pushed to the sidelines, and some are just generally shallow. Now, to be fair, maybe I'm judging these characters, the new ones in particular, a bit too early. I mean, there's still 2/3 of Season 3 left, and there's plenty of time for things to happen and developments to take place. But, on the other hand, picture a movie where the first hour is mediocre. Even if in the second hour things start to pick up, that doesn't mean the first hour can't be better. A strong start is a vital foundation. Yes, you can make changes later on, but they're going to be in relation to what took place before. If you leave your good ideas to the 11th hour, they're not going to be as impactful, and they're going to matter that much less. And so, those were my thoughts on Season 3 Part 1. Do you have similar opinions? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. I'm both excited and worried to read what you have to say. Season 3 is just getting started, and so is my review. Part 2 is where the story really starts going places, and man, do I have opinions about where said story ends up. but I'll save those for a later day. So as per usual, I'm Andyb, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if I make another, I'll see you then. Take it easy.